I'm Cassandra Johnson, and I've become a damn expert at hiding bruises standing in my bathroom. Mirror at 7 a.m., I carefully applied concealer to the purple marks along my jawline. Wesley's voice echoed from the kitchen. Already critiquing something? Cassandra, this coffee tastes like dirt water again. My hands trembled slightly as I capped the makeup. 3 years of this, 3 years of walking on eggshells, measuring every word, every glance, every breath coming honey. I called back, forcing sweetness into my voice. Wesley stood by the stove, his jaw clenched in that familiar way that made my stomach drop the eggs. I'd made him sat untouched, probably cold by now. You can't do anything, right, can you? He gestured at the plate with disgust. Look. At this mess my mother taught me women should know how to cook. I can make something else, don't bother. He grabbed his briefcase. Just try harder. Okay, I work. 12-hour days, the least you can do is make decent food. After he left, I sat alone at our kitchen table, staring at the perfectly fine eggs. My phone buzzed constantly throughout breakfast. Wesley. Checking in, always checking in at Henderson Marketing. My colleague Sarah noticed me flinching when my phone rang. You okay? Cassie seemed jumpy lately. Fine, I lied, declining. Wesley's fourth call of the morning, just tired, but Sarah's concerned expression lingered in my mind. When had I become this person? This shadow of myself constantly looking over my shoulder. The workday dragged every phone. Buzz sent anxiety through my chest. Wesley's texts grew increasingly demanding. Why didn't you answer? Who are you talking to? I saw a man commented on your LinkedIn by evening. I'd answered every call, responded to every text, but it wasn't enough. It was never enough. Wesley cornered me the moment I walked through our apartment door. Tom Bradley from your office sent you a connection request, he said, holding my phone like evidence in a trial. He's just a colleague. Just a colleague? His voice rose dangerously. You think I'm stupid? You think I don't see what's happening? Wesley, nothing's happening. I barely know him. Don't lie to me. He grabbed my wrist, his fingers digging in. You were probably flirting with him all day. Weren't you making eyes at him like some desperate stop? The word came out barely above a whisper. Stop. He laughed bitterly. You don't tell me to stop. You're mine, Cassandra. When are you going to get that through your thick skull? I pulled away from him, my wrist throbbing. I'm going to bed. Yeah, run away. That's what you always do, run away like the pathetic little girl you are in our bedroom. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the red marks on my wrist. Something inside me was breaking, had been breaking for months, maybe years, but tonight felt different. Tonight, the cracks were spreading too wide to repair for the first time in 3 years. I let myself imagine what it would feel like to just leave 3 days past in that suffocating routine, Wesley monitoring every breath, every step, every damn heartbeat. But something had shifted inside me that night. The breaking point had cracked something open, and suddenly I could see possibilities I'd forgotten existed. Friday morning, while Wesley showered, I made a decision that scared the hell out of me. I called in sick to work, my voice shaking as I lied to my boss. Then I threw some clothes into my old college backpack and left a note. Gone to see Mom for the weekend, need some space. It wasn't true. Mom lived in Florida and I hadn't spoken to her in months. Wesley had gradually isolated me from family, friends, everyone who might notice the changes in me, but I needed that lie. I needed those precious hours. Before he'd start tracking me down, my hands trembled as I started my car. Freedom felt foreign, terrifying. I'd forgotten what it was like to make a choice without permission. I drove west on IU S80, no destination in mind, just away from Des Moines. Away from Wesley, away from the woman I'd become. The highway stretched endlessly ahead, and for the first time in years, that felt like possibility instead of emptiness. 2 hours later, I pulled into a rest stop near Adair. My phone had been buzzing. Nonstop Wesley calling and texting with increasing panic and rage. I turned it off, hands shaking with the audacity of it. That's when I saw her. She was crouched beside a red Honda, wrestling with what looked like the world's most stubborn tire. Blonde hair escaped from a messy bun, and she was cursing creatively enough to make a sailor. Blush something about her energy drew me in. She looked free, completely, utterly free. Need help. I called out, surprised by my own voice. She glanced up, and I caught my breath. Blue eyes, the color of summer sky, met mine with a grin that was pure mischief, unless you've got magical tire-changing powers. I think I'm screwed, she said, wiping grease on her jeans. This thing's been fighting me for 20 minutes. I found myself smiling, an expression that felt rusty from disuse. I'm not exactly mechanically gifted, but I could grab us coffee while you battle it out now you're talking. She stood extending a hand. I'm Genevieve Cassandra. Her handshake was firm. Confident everything mine wasn't. We ended up sharing terrible vending machine coffee and surprisingly good conversation. Genevieve had this way of talking that pulled stories out of me, stories I'd forgotten I had. She was driving back from Colorado, where she'd been hiking solo for 2 weeks solo. The concept seemed impossible to me, best way to travel. She leaned against the picnic table. No schedules, no compromises. Just you and whatever adventure finds you, the way she said it made adventure sound like something that could actually happen to regular people. To me, must be nice, I said, trying to keep the longing out of my voice. What about you, road trip or just passing through? I hesitated. The truth felt too raw, too complicated getting. Away for the weekend. Something in her expression shifted, became gentler, like she could see through my careful words to the bruises underneath. Well, she said finally, if you're not in a hurry to get wherever you're going, I know some beautiful back roads. That's how I found myself following Genevieve's Honda down winding country roads I'd never seen before. Despite living in Iowa my whole life, she led me through landscapes that looked like postcards, rolling hills dotted with farmhouses and wildflower, meadows that stretched toward endless sky. We stopped at a roadside fruit stand where Genevieve charmed the elderly farmer into giving us directions to a hidden lake. She had this infectious energy that made everything feel like an adventure I watched. Her laugh with the old man, completely at ease, and felt something unfamiliar stirring in my chest. You're different when you smile, she said as we drove toward the lake. We'd rolled our windows down, and the summer air carried the scent of hay. And freedom, different how? Like you're remembering who you used to be. The words hit deeper than they should have. When had I last thought about who I used to be before Wesley, before the careful walking on eggshells, before I learned to make myself smaller and smaller until I practically disappeared at the lake? We spread an old blanket Genevieve kept in her trunk. She bought sandwiches and peaches at the fruit stand, and we ate while watching the sun sink toward the horizon, painting the water gold. Tell me about your family, I said, desperate to keep her talking. Her voice had become my favorite sound. I have a twin sister. Maya. Genevieve's expression softened, complete opposite of me. She's got the house, the husband, the whole suburban dream. Emmy, I can't stay in one place longer than 6 months without feeling like I'm suffocating. That sounds lonely. Sometimes she looked at me with those startling blue eyes. But better lonely than trapped. You know, the word trapped hung in the air between. US. She wasn't looking at the lake anymore. She was looking at me, and I felt exposed, like she could see every hidden bruise, every careful lie I told myself. Cassandra, she said softly, whatever you're running from, you don't have to go back. That's when I started crying, not the careful, silent tears I perfected around Wesley, but ugly shoulder-shaking sobs that came from somewhere deep and broken. Inside me, Genevieve didn't say anything. She just moved closer and pulled me against her shoulder. Her arms felt different than any embrace I'd known safe. No expectation, no demand for something in return. Just comfort freely given. When I finally stopped crying, I told her about Wesley, not everything, not the worst parts, but enough. About the constant monitoring, the criticism, the way he'd slowly convinced me I was worthless without him. Jesus, she whispered. How long? 3 years, and you've never tried to leave? Where would I go? He's right. I can't do anything on my own. I tried to leave once last year, made it 2 days before I went crawling back. Genevieve was quiet for a long moment, then she turned to face me fully, her hands gentle on my shoulders. That's not true. She said firmly, you drove yourself here today. You made the choice to stop and help a stranger. You're sitting by this lake, having a conversation about real things. You're already doing things on your own. The sun was setting properly now, casting everything in warm golden light. Genevieve's face was so close to mine, her eyes searching my expression with an intensity that made my heart race. Can I show you something? She whispered before I could answer. She leaned forward and kissed me soft, tentative, giving me every chance to pull away. But I didn't want to pull away. I wanted to lean into this feeling, this rightness that Wesley's kisses had never carried when we broke apart. I was shaking again, but not from tears. This time I've never. I started, then stopped. I didn't know I could feel like that. She smiled, brushing a strand of hair from my face. Like what, like? I matter. The drive back to Des Moines felt different with Genevieve following behind me. I kept catching glimpses of her headlights in my rearview mirror, and each time something warm spread through my chest. I'd finally turned my phone back on, and the screen lit up with 17 missed calls and 31 text messages from Wesley. The messages started worried, then escalated to angry, then devolved into pure rage. Where the hell are you? Answer your damn phone. When I find you, you'll be sorry. My hands shook. As I read them at a red light, the old Cassandra would have called immediately, would have gone home with apologies. Already prepared, but something had changed at that lake. Something had awakened that I wasn't ready to put back to sleep. I texted him back safe home tomorrow. His response came instantly. You better have a damn good explanation at a small motel outside the city. I parked next to Genevieve's Honda. The neon vacancy sign flickered pink against the gathering darkness. This was crazy. I was a woman who planned grocery lists a week in advance, who had never made an impulsive decision in her adult life. You okay? Genevieve asked as we checked in. The desk clerk handed us keys to adjoining rooms without comment. Terrified, I admitted. But the good kind of terrified, if that makes sense. In my room, she sat on the edge of the bed while I paced by the window. Wesley had called 3 more times in the past hour each. Ring felt like a chain trying to drag me back to that suffocating apartment. Tell me about your dreams, Genevieve said suddenly. My dreams? Before him, before all this, what did you want to be? When you were a kid, I sat down beside her, the mattress dipping under our weight, a photographer. I used to carry this old camera everywhere, taking pictures of everything, flowers, people, abandoned buildings. What happened to that? Wesley said it was a waste of time, that I needed to focus on practical things. I laughed bitterly. I sold my camera equipment to help pay for his business school applications. Genevieve's jaw tightened. He took your dreams and convinced you they didn't matter. I let him. No, she turned to face me. Fully, you trusted someone who said they loved you. That's not the same thing. When my phone rang again, I stared at Wesley's name on the screen for a long moment, then declined the call. This simple act felt revolutionary. The panic attack hit me an hour later. We'd been talking about her travels, her stories filling the room with possibility and adventure. Then Wesley called again, and suddenly I couldn't breathe. The walls felt like they were closing in. I can't do this, I gasped, doubled over on the bed. He's going to find me. He always finds me. Genevieve knelt beside me, her voice calm and steady. Look at me, Cassandra. Breathe with me in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. She guided me through the breathing until my chest stopped feeling like it was trapped in a vice. When I finally looked up, her blue eyes were filled with a tenderness that made me want to cry all over again. You're safe, she whispered. Right here, right now, you're safe. Something shifted between us in that moment. The air in the small room felt charged electric. When she reached out to touch my face, I leaned into her palm like a flower seeking sunlight this time. When she kissed me, there was nothing tentative about it. Her lips were warm and sure, and I felt myself melting into her touch when her hands found the hem of my shirt. I didn't pull away for the first time in years. I wanted to be touched, wanted to feel alive in my own skin. We moved slowly, carefully, As if we both understood how precious this moment was, her touch was gentle. Where Wesley's had been demanding, patient, where his had been selfish, when she whispered my name against my skin. It sounded like a prayer, like something sacred. Afterward, we lay tangled together in the cheap motel sheets, and I felt more whole than I had in years. Genevieve traced lazy patterns on my shoulder, and I realized this was what intimacy actually felt like: not taking, but sharing, not conquering, but connecting. I don't want to go back, I whispered into the darkness. Then don't we return to my apartment? Sunday evening, and the first sign that something was wrong hit us before we even reached the door. Genevieve's dog Max, who'd been calm during our entire weekend, suddenly went rigid in the backseat of her Honda. His fur bristled, and he started a low, continuous growl that made my skin crawl. "He never does this," Genevieve said, trying to calm him. "Max, what's wrong, boy?" But Max wouldn't settle. He kept staring at my apartment building with an intensity that made me nervous. Dogs can sense things we can't. My grandmother used to say, they know when danger's coming. Inside my apartment, everything looked normal, but something felt off. Little things. My coffee mug in the sink was turned a different direction. The mail on my kitchen counter was stacked too neatly. Wesley had a key, of course. He'd probably been here, going through my things, looking for clues about where I'd been and who. I'd been with Genevieve. Noticed my tension immediately. "What is it?" "He's been here," I whispered while we were gone. "Wesley's been in my apartment." Meanwhile, across town, Wesley was conducting his own investigation. I found out later that he'd spent Saturday visiting my office building, charming the weekend security guard with lies about needing to drop off something important for me. He'd managed to get my emergency contact list from my desk, then systematically called everyone on it. Sarah from work called me Monday morning. Cassie, your boyfriend, came by asking questions about you. He seemed really upset. "What kind of questions?" "About who you talked to at work, if you'd mentioned any trips. He wanted to know about male colleagues." Specifically, her voice dropped. I didn't tell him anything, but he scared me a little. He was so intense, my blood ran cold. Wesley wasn't just angry about my disappearance. He was building a case, gathering evidence, like I was a criminal who committed some terrible crime by taking a weekend for myself. "Did he mention anything else?" he asked. "About your computer access logs. Wanted to know if you'd been on social media at work." I told him I didn't know, but Cassie wrote everything down like he was taking notes for something. After I hung up, I found Genevieve in my kitchen making coffee. Max still restless at her feet. The dog hadn't relaxed since we'd arrived, constantly moving between the windows and door. His ears pricked for sounds only he could hear. "We need to talk about this," she said, gesturing to my phone. "He's escalating." I know. I sat down heavily at my kitchen table. "He's never done anything like this before." The checking up on me, yes, but not interrogating my coworkers. "What's your lease situation here? 6 months? Left. I looked around my apartment, seeing it differently. Now, instead of home, it felt like a trap. Wesley knew every corner of this place had a key, could come and go as he pleased. In your job, I've been there. 4 years, good benefits, decent pay. The thought of leaving everything behind terrified me almost as much as staying. Genevieve sat across from me, reaching for my hands. "I'm not saying you have to decide anything right now, but I want you to know you have options." That afternoon, while Genevieve ran to the store, Wesley showed up. I heard his key in the lock and felt my stomach drop to my shoes. Max started barking immediately. A sharp warning bark that echoed through the apartment. Wesley pushed through the door like he owned the place, which legally he almost did. His name was on the lease too. "Where the hell have you been?" His voice was dangerously quiet, the tone. "He was right before explosions. I told you I needed space." "Space," he laughed harshly. "You needed space from me after everything I've done for you, after I've taken care of you all these years." Max's barking intensified, and Wesley's eyes fixed on the dog with undisguised hatred. "Whose mutt is this? A friend's?" I said weakly. "What friend? You don't have friends anymore, remember?" I made sure of that. His smile was cold predatory. So whose dog is it, really, Cassandra? And who were you with all weekend before? I could answer. I heard Genevieve's key in the lock. My heart stopped. Wesley spun toward the door, his expression shifting. Into something dangerous and calculating. Genevieve walked in carrying grocery bags, took one look at the scene, and immediately understood. Wesley standing too close to me, my obvious fear, Max's aggressive barking, her jaw set in a way that would have been intimidating if Wesley hadn't been so consumed with his own rage. You must be the friend. Wesley said, his voice dripping with false politeness. I'm Wesley, Cassandra's boyfriend. Genevieve set the grocery bags down slowly, her blue eyes never leaving Wesley's face. Genevieve, she said simply. No smile, no pretense of politeness. Interesting name. Wesley stepped closer to her, and I could see the calculation in his eyes. He was sizing her up, looking for weaknesses to exploit. So you're the one who's been filling my girlfriend's head with ideas. What kind of ideas? Genevieve's voice was steady, but I caught the warning underneath: independence, self-respect. Dangerous concepts for a woman. Like Cassandra, the casual cruelty in his tone made my stomach turn. This was Wesley at his worst. The version that came out when he felt his control slipping. Max's barking had turned into a continuous growl. The dog positioning himself between Wesley and as Cassandra is an adult. Genevieve said she doesn't need anyone's permission to have friends. Wesley laughed. The sound sharp and ugly friends, is that what you're calling it? His gaze flicked between us, and I saw the moment he put the pieces together. Oh, this is rich. My girlfriend's having some kind of midlife crisis with another woman. Wesley stopped. I said, finding my voice. Stop. He wheeled on me, his face flushing with anger. You disappeared for an entire weekend with this woman, ignore my calls, and you want me to stop asking questions? I left you a note. I told you I needed space from me after 3 years together. After I've supported you, put a roof over your head, dealt with your constant neediness. Each word felt like a slap. This was how he always did it, twisting reality until I questioned my own memories. But this time Genevieve was here to witness it. This time I wasn't alone. That's not how it happened, I said quietly. Don't contradict me. His voice exploded in the small space. I know exactly how it happened because I lived it. You were nothing when I found you, a sad little girl with no direction, no goals, no backbone. That's enough. Genevieve stepped forward, her voice cutting through his tirade. Wesley's attention snapped to her, and something dangerous flickered in his expression. This doesn't concern you, sweetheart. This is between me and my girlfriend. Actually, it concerns me plenty. When you're screaming at someone, I care about the words hung in the air. Like a challenge, Wesley's face went from red to white to red again, and I saw his hands clench into fists. Care about his voice dropped to a whisper that was somehow more terrifying than his shouting. How much do you care about her? Before either of us could answer, he lunged forward, not at Genevieve, but at me. His hand caught my wrist in a grip that sent pain shooting up my arm, and I cried out. That's when everything exploded. Genevieve moved faster than I'd ever seen anyone move, grabbing Wesley's arm and twisting it away from me with surprising strength. Max erupted into full attack mode, barking and snapping at Wesley's legs. Wesley stumbled backward, more surprised than hurt, but his rage was escalating beyond reason. Get your hands off me. He swung wildly at Genevieve, catching her shoulder and sending her stumbling into the coffee table. Something snapped inside me then. 3 years of carefully controlled fear, 3 years of apologizing for existing, 3 years of making myself smaller and smaller until I disappeared. All of it crystallized into a single moment of absolute clarity. Get out. The voice that came out of me was stronger than I'd heard in years. Get out of my apartment right now. Wesley stared at me in shock. What did you say to me? I said, get out. I stood up straighter, feeling something shift inside my chest. This is my home. My name is on the lease too, and I'm telling you to leave. You can't make me leave. This is our place. No. I walked to the door and opened it wide. It's not anymore. Get your things and get out. For a moment, Wesley just stared at me like I'd grown a second head, then his expression hardened into something I'd never seen before. Pure cold hatred. Fine, he said quietly, but this isn't over. Cassandra, you think you can humiliate me like this? And just walk away. Genevieve moved to stand beside me, and I felt her hand slip into mine. The simple gesture gave me strength. I didn't know I had, yeah. I said, my voice steady for the first time in years. I do. Wesley's gaze flicked to our joined hands, and his lip curled in disgust. You'll regret this, both of you. He left. But his words followed him out the door like a promise of things to come. I thought kicking Wesley out would be the end of it. God was. I naive. Within 48 hours, he launched a campaign that made his previous controlling behavior look like child's play. It started with my car Tuesday morning. I found the tires slashed and keyed across the driver's side door in jagged letters. My hands shook as I called the police, but Officer Martinez just looked tired when he saw the damage. Any idea who might have done this? My ex-boyfriend, I said, showing him screenshots of Wesley's increasingly unhinged text messages. Hard to prove without witnesses or camera footage. You might want to consider a restraining order. Genevieve picked me up from the police station, her face grim as she surveyed the damage to my Honda. He's not going to stop, she said quietly. I know. I leaned against her shoulder, feeling defeated already. Maybe I should just go back and end this before it gets worse. Don't you dare. Her arms tightened around me. That's exactly what he wants. He's trying to break you down so you'll crawl back to him. But Wesley was just getting started. By Thursday, rumors were circulating at Henderson Marketing, whispers in the break room that stopped when I walked by. Sarah finally told me what people were saying. He's been calling people. Cass telling them you're having some kind of breakdown, that you'd gotten involved with drugs or something. Her voice was uncomfortable, embarrassed. He mentioned the lesbian thing too. My stomach dropped. What lesbian thing? He's telling people you left him for another woman, making it sound like you were cheating. All along, she hurried to add, not that there's anything wrong with that, but you know how people talk. I did know how people talked. I saw it in the sideways glances from coworkers, the way conversations died when I entered rooms Wesley was poisoning every aspect of my life with surgical precision. That evening, Genevieve found me crying at my kitchen table, surrounded by legal documents I'd printed about restraining orders. This is too complicated, I said, wiping my eyes. Look at all this paperwork. I need evidence of threats, patterns of behavior, witness statements. So we'll get evidence. She sat beside me, pulling the papers closer. We'll document everything he's done, everything he's doing. You don't understand. Wesley's smart. He's careful about what he says in writing. Most of his threats are verbal implied, and who's going to believe me? Over him, he's charming when he wants to be. I believe you. Genevieve reached for my hand, and I'll help you document everything from now on. Over the next week, we became amateur investigators. Every time Wesley called, I put him on speaker while Genevieve recorded everything on her phone, every threatening text, every damaged piece of property, every person he contacted to spread lies about me. We documented it. All the work brought us closer together in unexpected ways. Late nights organizing evidence files turned into conversations about our futures, our dreams, what we wanted, our lives to look like. The physical attraction that had sparked at the lake deepened into something more substantial. I've never felt this way about anyone. I admitted one night as we lay tangled together on my couch with Wesley, everything was about what he wanted, what he needed with you. I feel like an equal partner. You are an equal partner. She traced patterns on my skin. That made me shiver. That's what love is supposed to feel like. Love. The words sat between us, new and fragile and terrifying. Is that what this is? I whispered instead of answering. She kissed me with a tenderness that spoke louder than words. We made love that night with a desperation born of knowing how fragile our happiness was, how much we had to lose. Her touch was gentle but urgent, as if she was memorizing every inch of my skin. When I whispered her name in the darkness, it sounded like a prayer, like a promise of the woman I could become if given the chance afterward. As she slept curled against me, I allowed myself to imagine a future where Wesley couldn't touch us, where we could build something beautiful together without looking over our shoulders. But Monday morning brought reality crashing back. Wesley had escalated again. I arrived at work to find my boss waiting for me, his expression uncomfortable. "Cassandra, we need to talk," in his office. He cleared his throat awkwardly. "I received some disturbing information about your personal life. Allegations about drug use, erratic behavior from someone claiming to be concerned about your welfare." Look, I don't usually get involved in employee personal matters, but these are serious accusations. My heart pounded. "Mr. Henderson, those allegations are false. My ex-boyfriend is trying to sabotage my career. Because I left him, can you prove that for the first time since this nightmare began?" I smiled. "Actually, yes, I can." Walking into that courthouse felt like walking toward my execution, but Genevieve's hand in mine kept me grounded. We'd spent 2 weeks preparing for this moment, organizing every piece of evidence Wesley had carelessly left behind in his campaign to destroy me. "Remember," Genevieve whispered as we took our seats, "he's counting on you to be the scared woman he controlled for 3 years. Show them who you really are." The restraining order hearing was scheduled for 9 o'clock. And Wesley sat across the courtroom with his lawyer, a sharp-suited man who looked like he specialized in making victims feel small. Wesley himself looked perfectly composed, wearing the charming mask he perfected for public appearances. When my name was called, I stood on shaky legs and approached the witness stand. Judge Morrison was a stern-looking woman in her 60s who'd probably seen every variation of domestic abuse imaginable. "Ms. Johnson, please tell the court why you're seeking this restraining order." For a moment, my voice caught in my throat. 3 years of conditioning told me to apologize, to minimize, to make myself smaller. Then I saw Genevieve in the gallery nodding encouragement, and something clicked into place. "Your Honor, my ex-boyfriend Wesley Richardson has engaged in a systematic campaign of harassment and intimidation since I ended our relationship 2 months ago." My voice grew stronger with each word. "He's vandalized my property, contacted my employer with false accusations, and threatened both me and my friend." Wesley's lawyer objected. "Hearsay. Your Honor, where's the proof of these alleged threats?" That's when I smiled. "I have recordings." The next hour was a revelation. We played recording after recording of Wesley's increasingly unhinged voicemails. His voice filled the courtroom, venomous and threatening, telling me exactly what he planned to do to me and Genevieve if we didn't comply with his demands. "You think you can embarrass me like this?" His recorded voice snarled. "I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of disgusting pervert you really are. I'll destroy your career, your reputation, everything." Wesley's composed facade cracked with each recording. His lawyer kept objecting, but the evidence was overwhelming. Pictures of my vandalized car, screenshots of texts, witness statements from coworkers who'd received his poisoned phone calls. "And this morning," I continued, "he violated the temporary restraining order I filed last week." I produced screenshots from my phone showing Wesley parked outside my apartment building at 6 a.m., along with the timestamps proving he'd been there despite court orders to stay away. Judge Morrison's expression grew thunderous as she reviewed the evidence. "Mr. Richardson, do you have anything to say in your defense?" Wesley stood, and for a moment I saw a flash of the charming man who'd swept me off my feet years ago. "Your Honor, this is all a misunderstanding. Cassandra's been having some mental health issues since she got involved with that woman. I was just trying to help her by vandalizing her car and calling her employer with false accusations. I never vandalized anything, and I was genuinely concerned about her erratic behavior, but Judge Morrison had heard enough." "Mr. Richardson, the evidence clearly shows a pattern of harassment and intimidation. I'm granting a full restraining order for 1 year. You are to have no contact with Miss Johnson, direct or indirect. You're to stay at least 500 feet away from her home workplace and any location where she might reasonably be expected to appear. The gavel came down with a sound like hope crystallizing into reality outside the courthouse. Wesley was waiting by his car, his face twisted with rage. The bailiff had escorted us out through a side door specifically to avoid this confrontation, but Wesley had anticipated our route. "This isn't over." He called out his voice, carrying across the parking lot. "You think a piece of paper is going to protect you?" That's when he made his fatal mistake. He started walking toward us, his hands clenched into fists, his intent clear in every line of his body. The courthouse security guard, who'd been escorting us, immediately called for backup within minutes. Wesley found himself face down on the hot asphalt, being arrested for violating a restraining order that was less than an hour old. Stupid. Genevieve murmured as we watched the police car drive away with Wesley in the back seat. He couldn't help himself. I felt lighter than I had in years. The man who'd controlled every aspect of my life for so long was finally facing consequences. For his actions, the system I'd been afraid to trust had actually worked. 2 days later, I walked into Mr. Henderson's office with my resignation letter. "Cassandra, you don't have to quit," he said, looking genuinely remorseful. "I know we handled the situation poorly when those accusations first came up. It's not about that." I set the letter on his desk with steady hands. "I'm starting my own photography business. It's time." I stopped living someone else's version of my life that night, Genevieve. And I celebrated with cheap champagne in my apartment. Max had finally relaxed, completely sprawling across the couch like he owned the place. "So, what's next?" she asked, curled against my side. I kissed her softly, tasting possibility and promise. On her lips, everything, the whole damn world. 6 months after Wesley's arrest, I stood in the warehouse district of Des Moines, hanging prints for my first solo photography exhibition. The space was raw, industrial, perfect for the series I'd been working on, titled "Breaking Free: Portraits of Women Who'd Escaped Controlling Relationships and Found Their Authentic Selves." "That one's my favorite," Genevieve said, pointing to a black and white portrait of a woman laughing in a field of sunflowers. It was actually her, though, transformed by the lens and the joy radiating from her face. "You captured something magical there." Maya walked up behind us, carrying a tray of champagne glasses. Meeting Genevieve's twin had been surreal. They looked identical but moved through the world completely differently. Where Genevieve was spontaneous energy, Maya was thoughtful grace. "The gallery looks amazing, Cass," Mia said, using the nickname that had stuck since our first meeting. "I never thought I'd say this about my sister's girlfriend, but you're actually good for her." "Thanks, I think." I laughed, still getting used to being someone's girlfriend without apology or explanation. The opening reception was everything I dreamed of, but never dared imagine. Former coworkers, new friends from the photography community. Even a few potential clients circulated through the space. Sarah from Henderson Marketing bought 2 prints, whispering that everyone at the office missed my positive energy. "You look different," she observed, happy, really happy around 9:00p. When the crowd had thinned to close friends, Genevieve pulled me aside to the back corner where I'd hung my most personal piece, a self-portrait taken the morning after Wesley's conviction. In it, I was looking directly at the camera with eyes that held no fear, no apology, just quiet strength. "I have something for you," she said, her voice nervous in a way that made my heart skip. "General, you've already given me everything, your support, your love, a whole new life." Not everything. She reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box that made my breath catch. "Genevieve, I know it's fast. I know we've only been together 6 months, but I also know that what we have is real in a way I've never experienced before." She opened the box to reveal not a traditional diamond, but a vintage emerald ring that matched her eyes perfectly. "I'm not asking you to marry me tomorrow. I'm asking you to build a life with me." Whatever that looks like, the ring was beautiful, but what took my breath away was the way she was looking at me, like I was precious, like I was chosen, not settled for. "Yes," I whispered, then louder. "Yes, of course, yes." She slipped the ring onto my finger, and it fit perfectly, like it had been waiting for this moment as long as we had. Maya started crying before either of us did. Finally, she said, pulling us both into a fierce hug. Finally, my sister found someone worth keeping still. For the rest of the evening passed in a blur of congratulations and champagne as we cleaned up after the last guests left. I keep catching glimpses of the ring on my finger, still hardly believing this was my life. Now, no regrets, Genevieve asked as we loaded the last of the unsold prints into her car. I looked around. The empty gallery space where I displayed work that 6 months ago. I'd been too scared to even attempt then at the woman who'd shown me I was worth loving exactly as I was. Only one, I said, wrapping my arms around her waist. What's that? I kissed her softly under the streetlights of downtown Des Moines, tasting the future on her lips that I waited so long to find myself. 2 years later, at our commitment ceremony in that same gallery space, now permanently converted to my studio, I would look out at the faces of friends who they'd become family and realize that sometimes the most beautiful thing about breaking free isn't where you end up, but discovering you had wings all along. Wesley never contacted us again. Last I heard, he'd moved to California and were married within a year. Some women have to learn the hard way, like I did. Others are lucky enough to recognize the cage before the door locks. As for me, I learned that love isn't about possession or control. It's about witnessing someone become their truest self and feeling grateful that they chose to share that journey with you every morning. I wake up next to Genevieve. I remember that I'm not just surviving anymore. I'm finally completely, gloriously alive.